Most relationships don't end because of betrayal. They don't collapse overnight because love suddenly disappears. More often, they slowly weaken because of neglect. Neglect is quiet. It doesn't shout. It doesn't explode. It doesn't always create dramatic fights. Instead, it slowly removes the things that make a relationship feel alive. Attention, care, emotional presence. And by the time many couples realize something is wrong, the distance has already grown. Today we're talking about the warning signs of neglect in a relationship. The small signals many couples overlook until the damage becomes serious. If you're married, dating, or preparing for a serious relationship, pay attention to these signs. Because neglect rarely begins loudly. It begins quietly. One of the first warning signs of neglect is when conversations become purely practical. You talk about bills, schedules, kids, work, groceries, but emotional conversations slowly disappear. No one asks how you're really feeling. No one asks what has been stressing you lately. Communication still exists, but connection slowly fades. A relationship should never feel like a business meeting. When emotional conversations disappear, neglect is often quietly entering the relationship. Another warning sign appears when small gestures start disappearing. At the beginning of a relationship, small things matter. A compliment, a thoughtful message, a quick hug, a simple thank you. These small acts make people feel appreciated. But when neglect begins, those gestures slowly fade away. Not always because someone stopped caring, but because effort slowly becomes routine, and routine becomes complacency. People start assuming their partner already knows how they feel, but love must be expressed, not assumed. When appreciation disappears, people begin to feel invisible, and invisibility slowly weakens emotional connection. Another clear sign of neglect is imbalance in effort. One person is always trying. They start the conversations. They plan the time together. They try to solve problems. They try to reconnect, while the other person becomes passive. Relationships require mutual effort, not perfection, but participation. When one partner carries the emotional responsibility alone, exhaustion eventually replaces affection. Healthy relationships feel like partnership, not emotional labor. Another warning sign of neglect is when quality time disappears. Being in the same space does not always mean you are truly together. Many couples sit in the same room for hours, but both are on their phones, scrolling, watching different screens, living separate experiences. Time together becomes routine instead of intentional. Quality time is not about hours, it's about attention. Even 30 minutes of focused conversation can strengthen connection more than hours of distracted presence. Neglect grows when shared attention disappears. Affection fading is another powerful warning sign. Affection is one of the simplest ways people communicate care. A hug, holding hands, a kiss before leaving the house. These small gestures create emotional security. But when neglect grows, affection often fades. Not always because attraction disappeared, but because effort disappeared. When affection becomes rare, emotional distance grows faster than many people realize. Touch reassures your partner. It reminds them they still matter to you. Without that reassurance, insecurity quietly begins to grow. Another sign of neglect appears when problems stop being discussed. Some couples believe fewer arguments mean the relationship is healthier, but sometimes silence does not mean peace. Sometimes silence means withdrawal. When partners stop bringing up concerns, it may mean they have stopped believing the conversation will help, and that can be dangerous. Healthy relationships address tension. Neglected relationships avoid it. Avoidance does not solve problems, it only delays them until they become bigger than they should have been. Perhaps the clearest warning sign of neglect is when the relationship begins to feel like coexistence. You share a home, you share responsibilities, but emotional intimacy is missing. The laughter becomes rare, the conversations become shallow, the closeness fades. And the relationship slowly starts to feel more like living with a roommate than building a life with a partner. This is often when people begin to say, "We feel disconnected." But that disconnection did not happen suddenly. It developed slowly through daily neglect. Here is an important truth. Neglect rarely comes from bad intentions. Most of the time it comes from distraction, work, stress, responsibilities. Life becomes busy, and without realizing it, people stop nurturing the relationship. But relationships cannot grow on autopilot. They require attention. Not constant effort, but consistent effort. Just like a plant needs water, a relationship needs care. Without it, even strong love can slowly weaken. The good news is this: neglect can be reversed. Awareness is the first step. Once you recognize the warning signs, you can begin rebuilding the habits that strengthen connection. Ask meaningful questions again. Express appreciation again. Create intentional time again. Show affection again. Small actions rebuild emotional safety, and emotional safety rebuilds intimacy. So let me ask you something honestly. Which of these warning signs do you think couples ignore the most? Lack of communication, loss of affection, or the disappearance of quality time? Share your thoughts in the comments. And follow Marriage Compass 101 for practical conversations about building stronger, healthier relationships. Because strong relationships don't survive by accident, they survive through intention. So let me ask you something honestly. Which of these warning signs do you think couples ignore the most? Lack of communication, loss of affection, or the disappearance of quality time? Share your thoughts in the comments, because sometimes the smallest signs are the ones that matter the most. And recognizing them early can protect the relationship before distance grows too far. Thank you for watching. And remember, Marriage Compass 101, guiding you through the wisdom that protects love and strengthens relationships.